A face is a reflection of the soul. It changes, transforms, adapts. Have you ever dreamt of a better version of yourself?
Is this like a commercial for the movie The Substance? No, this is actually a commercial for Retouch for Me's latest retouching plugin called FaceMake. And today, I'm going to be looking at this controversial new software along with some other updates the company has released this year. So it's been 3 years, oh my gosh, 3 years since I first heard about Retouch for Me skin retouching software. And I made a video on our YouTube channel called Can You Retouch Skin in Less Than 30 Seconds? And the results were so good that I started using this software full time. It's a part of my workflow and I apply it to almost every single photo shoot that I do. Now I'm gonna show you the results of this software because it's really pretty amazing, but it didn't come without some problems. First, the main problem that I always had with this software was that it took a lot of effort to add different effects onto a single image. Now, if you aren't familiar with Retouch for Me, they sell each retouching effect a la carte, which is kind of cool because you only have to pay for the ones that you truly want. But because they all run as individual separate Photoshop filters, if you wanted to apply 2, 3, 4, or 5 different effects on a single image, you had to go to each one of those filters, click on it, wait a few seconds, go to the next filter, click on it. And there was no way to really automate that unless you made some sort of Photoshop action. All of that, thank goodness, has all now been solved. And so in today's video, I'm gonna be looking at the new Retouch for Me panel that you can use in Photoshop, which solves this problem, as well as their newest plugin, FaceMake. Now, because people are gonna ask, yes, this is a sponsored video, but hear me out. I 100% believe that Retouch for Me is the best automated skin retouching software on the market. There's some other applications, especially for your cell phone, that do some really crazy things that often go way too far. But for those professional photographers out there who want realistic and subtle skin retouching, they want automatic dodging and burning, and consistent skin color and repair, this is by far the best one-click software I have ever used. It's so good they even received a TIPO award last year for the best AI portrait retouching software. All right, so let's jump right into this video because I know a lot of times these software videos can get a little long and boring and we definitely don't want that. So let's jump into Photoshop here. If we go up to plugins, I've already installed the Retouch for Me panel. I can just click on that right here. It's going to add this panel right in Photoshop, a program that I'm super comfortable using. And as you can see here, I can turn on and off different filters based on what I need for this specific image. Now, as I just mentioned, each one of these filters is sold a la carte. So any of these that you want to use locally on your own computer, you do have to buy, which we'll talk about the pricing here in a minute. If you don't want to buy any of these, but you want to try them all out, instead of using this on your device full-time, completely unlocked, you can go over to the cloud retouch. You can purchase different credits, and then you can click on these different filters without having to buy each one individually and just use them on a per image basis. The cloud retouch is great if you just want to make a few images per shoot look really good and you want to spend 10, 20, 30 cents per image. But if you're like me and you want to add this to a full wedding or to a full photo shoot, or you like to add all of the retouching up front so that when you go through the culling process, you can tell which images look great and the face is already retouched and everything, you're probably going to want to spend money to buy your favorite plugins and just have them run locally on your computer. But it is nice that Retouch for Me has both options. So depending on how many images you edit or your budget, you could just license the software per image at like 10 or 20 cents per retouch, or you could download the software and use it as many times as you want, unrestricted. Now, I don't own all of these plugins. I own probably half of them. And so I'm going to jump over to my on-device option. If you switch between the cloud and on your device, the effects do the exact same thing. So don't worry that one is going to be more robust than the other. If you already own these and are running them on your computer, they're going to do exactly the same as if you ran them on the cloud. The ones that I use the most is Heal. Now what Heal is going to do is when I hit retouch down here, it is going to remove all the blemishes, all of the acne, all the pimples, any kind of skin issues that you might have. It removes, I would say, 90% of all of that with just one click. Dodge and Burn is the other one that I have been using for the last 3 years. Now what Dodge and Burn does is it kind of repairs and flattens out any drastic abnormal density that you might have in skin. So if you've ever used the frequency separation trick where you have like a high band and a low band, the high band is going to be the detail. That's kind of what the healing tool is doing. The low band, the really broad edits that you can do, is going to be the dodging and burning. So I kind of think of them as those two different effects. And for me, using the heal and the dodge and burn together is something I almost always do. And then you have portrait volumes, which is the third most common effect that I've been using in my workflow the last 3 years. And what portrait volumes does is it's kind of like dodging and burning, but instead of using that tool to flatten and eliminate any imperfections in the skin, portrait volumes, it's actively burning in areas that might be more in the shadows, and then it's dodging areas where the skin might reflect a little bit more of your light. So it's adding more or less a 3D effect to the overall image. But for me, I always still apply this, but then maybe I set it at 50% so that it just gives me a little bit of a finished look without it being too over the top. Now that Retouch for me has this panel, I'm just gonna hit Retouch. And while it's running this process, it is going to take between 5 and 40 seconds per image, depending on how many of these effects you have turned on. So that took maybe 20 seconds, and now I have a layer for each one of these that I can turn on and off. So let me zoom in here. So I'm sorry, Jennifer, that I'm about to show this, but we've all had those days where you have to shoot and your skin suddenly just isn't as clean as you would have wished. So let me turn all of these off and show you what they all are doing individually. So heal is going to be the skin retouching, and look at that. That is unbelievable. I'm gonna zoom in just a little bit more so you can see this on YouTube. I mean, look at that. That is so crazy that it did the healing brush with one click and it looks that good. And now with the dodge and burn layer, if I turn this on and off, you can see what it's doing. It's using dodging to remove all of the dark areas on her face. And in this image, I don't really see that it's burning anything in, but the skin definitely looks way softer and more even using that dodge and burn layer. And then finally, let's turn on portrait volumes. And it's pretty subtle in this image, but it's now using the burn tool to kind of accentuate the curves on the left side of her face and maybe even down under her chin. If I throw all 3 effects into a single group and turn this on and off, I mean, look how big of a difference that is. Now, if you want to create your own specific recipe, maybe you find that the healing is too strong, you can come down here and set the sensitivity level. You can also choose how it looks at your image. Most times I use auto, but if you know that you have a close-up shot, maybe you're just doing headshots, you could choose close-up, half body, or full body. For dodging and burning, same sort of thing. You can come down here and change the blend mode. You could also warm up some of the tones if you kind of like the warmer dodge and burn effect. And then with portrait volumes, you also have blend as well. Once you have all of these selected, you can then come up here and save your different presets. So if you have a preset that you like just for headshots, or maybe a subtle one for weddings, maybe a really heavy one for your commercial work, you could have different presets that you then just select and then hit retouch, and boom, everything's all done at once. So I'm gonna go through a couple other examples just to show you how powerful this is before we go into the Face Make app and show you the crazy stuff that you can now do. All right, let's look at another image here. I am going to go to dodge and burn, and I'm going to turn this up to 200% now. We were at 100% before. And with portrait volumes, I'm also going to turn that up to 200%. And let's go ahead and hit retouch. And you can see by turning it up to 200% now, we're getting 2 separate layers for portrait volumes and 2 separate layers for dodge and burn. If I throw these all in a folder and turn this on and off, you can see it is adding a quite heavy effect on her face. So let me just turn off one portrait volume here. So you can see it's just doubling the amount of contouring on her face, and you can see what it's doing with the heal brush. That is pretty incredible. So if I turn all of these back on and then zoom out, you can see her face is starting to look a little fake, a little AI, a little plasticky. Let's turn off one portrait volume and one dodge and burn layer. And I think setting it at 100 instead of 200 is probably where I personally like it. And finally, let's see what this does with 2 or 3 different people. Sometimes you're shooting groups, say a wedding, or you're shooting e-commerce like this, where you have multiple models in the same photo. I'm gonna go back down to 100 on the dodge and burn and 100 on the portrait volume. Now let's turn on fabric, and let's set fabric to 100. And what fabric is going to do is it's going to try to remove some of the folds and the shadows on the clothing to try to make that look a little bit more polished. Let's go ahead and hit retouch there. Let's see how this performs with multiple people in the frame. All right, let's throw all of our layers into a folder. As we turn this on and off, you can see it kind of reduces the wrinkles in the clothing. If you don't have an assistant there, a stylist who's really paying attention to this, sometimes inevitably you're going to get some wrinkles in there. This definitely helps with that. Let's zoom in on the faces. Start over here with the profile shot. It did catch a little bit, although she doesn't have a whole lot to retouch. Model number 2. Okay, let's remove some of the acne and kind of cleaned up her skin, especially on her forehead. That looks really nice. And then model number 3. Looks great as well. One thing that I love about Retouch for me that I haven't noticed with other skin retouching software is that I feel 100% confident that I can set the heal and the dodge and burn on and just hit go, and it never produces an artifact, or it never removes something in a weird way where you have, you know, a heel brush splotch on their eye or something that's really noticeable. So I feel 100% confident batching full photo shoots, even full weddings through this, and not feeling like there might be an error. I've never, as far as I know, caught an error like that. So super convenient if you just want to kind of set it and forget it. And because we have this in a group, if I felt like something was a little heavy, I could always add a mask, come over here to my brush, set it to black, and kind of paint back some of the detail in the clothing. And it's non-destructive, so I could easily change that with the opacity or then remove some of those brush strokes as well. So that is the new panel in Photoshop. One last little thing I want to show you is the batch processing. I can come up here under my presets and I could save my favorite presets for different things like headshots or for weddings or for, you know, fashion. And then I can come down here to batch processing, select a folder, and then it's just going to go through the entire photo shoot and do all of those retouching tools on every single image. So that is a huge benefit with this, is you don't have to make those actions anymore. And in many cases, I do this after I've picked my selects, just going quickly through them in Lightroom. I then batch everything with the retouching, and then when it's time to really dive in deep and pick out the absolute best images, I'm looking at photos that have already been retouched, and it just makes me feel more confident in my shoot. Or if I get somebody here who, you know, they have a bad day and they have a lot of acne, it's nice knowing while I'm shooting that I can do all of this on the back end and it's all gonna look great. So it's definitely kind of changed the confidence that I have in a photo shoot when I'm working with somebody who doesn't have perfect skin. Now, everything I've just shown you is working in conjunction with Adobe Photoshop. If you don't use Adobe Photoshop and you still want to use all of these plugins, don't worry. You can head over to Retouch for Me's website and download their software called Arams. And this allows you to import different photographs into their software, and then you can turn on all of the same effects right here on the right. And just like the panels in Photoshop, you can turn on the cloud processing if you want to just use this on an image by image basis, or if you've downloaded and own the plugins outright, you can turn this off and you can do all of this on your local machine. So for me personally, I like to use all of this in Photoshop. It's a platform that I'm already really familiar with. I already subscribe to it and I don't want to really disrupt my workflow too much. I just put all of the plugins directly into Photoshop. But if you don't have Photoshop and you don't want to get into the Adobe ecosphere, start paying all of that, you can just use Arams and download this and start using it right off the bat. But let's now look at their newest plugin, Face Make, which allows you to do some really crazy things to your subject's face. Let's check this out because it's pretty wild. So instead of using the panel, I'm gonna come up here to Filter and let's go to Retouch for Me and go to Face Make. This is gonna open up a new editing window. If we come all the way here to the left, it's gonna show us the grid in which it's using to help model and adjust the model's face. And the first thing I want to do is just come here to lifting. In lifting, I'm not exactly even sure how to describe what this does, but as I move the slider to the right, it just kind of restructures the face. Sometimes it makes it skinnier, sometimes it changes the bone structure, it messes with the eyes and the nose and the ears, and then we can change the feminine lifting. You see what it's doing here. I mean, it's almost making her look a little cartoony. She almost looks like Ariana Grande now. Kind of wild. And then masculine lifting, it's kind of pulling down the brow and just making her look a little tougher. The lip effect is a little too much, so let's just bring that back down to 0. and maybe bring the lifting back towards 70. And if I come over here and do the before and after. So this is kind of controversial because this is clearly not what crystal looks like anymore. Basically what I think this is doing is if you told me to make this image as perfect as possible, I would probably go into Photoshop and start liquefying everything to make every line perfect and to try to make this person as aesthetically beautiful as possible. It's kind of a moral gray area where are we now even showing the same person? This kind of makes me think if we didn't have a model release, how far can you push someone's face before they're not even that person anymore, you know? I don't know. Interesting question. If I do the before and after, I mean, I feel like I like the after better. Does that make me a horrible person? Let's see what else we can do here, because if you go to fun mode, you can do some really crazy stuff where you could push this into some very cartoony directions. So I don't think fun mode makes any sense for the average photographer. Let's pull some of this back a little bit. But there are some cool things you can do with makeup. If you're like me, sometimes I don't know what to tell the model to do with her mascara and stuff. I typically say, hey, just show up kind of nude with like the most basic makeup that just makes your eyes look nice, but not over the top. Look at this. I can add all sorts of makeup, and this actually looks very compelling. Let's go to Midnight Halo, Stardust. I have used this in some other programs and it looks absolutely comical. These look really, really good. So that's kind of like a smoky eye, ruby touch, and then I can bring the depth down a little bit. I can also come to the lips and I can change the color of her lips, which is pretty wild. So if you're like me and you don't know how to tell your model what makeup to wear, or she doesn't come with any makeup, maybe this gives you the most options possible. And then skin, we can also add, you know, some blush on the cheeks. And if we go to the top one, Sun-Kissed, Golden Dots, and Nature Touch, it's gonna add freckles. So let me zoom in even more to this. Look at that. That's probably the heaviest one we could choose. If I go to Golden Dots, it's a little bit more subtle. And Sun-Kissed might be the most subtle. And of course we could pull that back too and just add a little bit of freckles. It's starting to get a little weird when you're like making a whole new person. I don't know why you would totally add freckles, but maybe there's a photo theme you're going for where this works for you, but definitely interesting, and I feel like it looks realistic. So that's probably the biggest takeaway that I have coming out of this. If I go to the before and after, I think this looks better to me. It just looks a little tighter, a little bit more polished. It, you know, she's a beautiful model either way, so I don't know that I'm having to change her face to like, you know, accommodate somebody who's got a double chin or, you know, might have not gotten enough sleep the night before. But I don't know, you tell me, is it better before or after? Let's cancel that and let me open up another image here. Let's do a guy and see how you might use this to improve the look of a photograph. Let's go back to filter and face make. Now this is a profile shot, so let's see how this works when the person is facing sideways. You can see the lifting, I mean, it's changing his nose structure and his forehead quite a bit. And we can use the masculine lifting. It's almost changing his expression. I don't know that we need any makeup on this guy, but let's go to displace and let's go to chin here. You can see it's just a very subtle change. But I can see where this might be useful if you have that one image that's just almost perfect, but the guy's expression is just off a little bit, or you don't want to start going in with the liquefied tool and like changing his forehead and everything. You could just bring it in here and kind of tweak it to see what AI thinks is the correct bone structure and just, you know, change the image just a little bit. Whether or not I would use this a whole lot, I don't really know, but I do think the makeup and the freckles to me is the most useful part of this software. Let's come down to reshape. And this is interesting. We can use the focal length to kind of change the dimensions of his face. I mean, he almost looks sad all the way at 0, and then he looks a little happier at 100%. So Same with symmetry. He almost looks sad with no symmetry, and then he looks a little cocky if you go all the way to the right. So interesting effect. I don't know exactly how I would use this yet, but it's another tool that you have at your disposal if you want to start trying to change the shape of everyone's face. So that is the latest updates from Retouch for me. Let's go to their website and check out their pricing model. So as I mentioned earlier, you can download each editor and plugin separately and just use that perpetually. You have a license to run as many photos as you want through that. Or you can use their retouching subscription model where you can use the cloud to edit images one by one. So they have different packages here. Basically, you could pay $20, $35, or $90 per month, and that's going to give you 200, 500, or 1,500 retouches per month. These can be as low as 6 cents per image. If you don't want to subscribe to anything each month, you can just come down here and get retouch packs where you could just download 15, 20, or 100 retouches themselves. This option is a little bit more expensive. It's coming in at 16 cents per credit or token, but with each one of these tokens, you can run as many different effects in one recipe, if you will. And so you're only spending 16 cents per image. For me, I like to run all of my photo shoots through this, and I'm batching thousands of images a month. And so for me, I personally would rather spend the money one time and just buy each plugin that I use the most frequently and then not use the cloud service at all. If I come over here to the photo retouching and I start looking at my favorite ones, which are the heal and the dodge and burn, you can see these are each $124. So it's sold a la carte, which in theory sounds kind of nice, but they're also pretty expensive. So to get the three that I use the most, the heal, the dodge and burn, and the portrait volumes, that's gonna be about $375. But once I spend that one time, I can then run every single image through the batch processor and do all of it over and over to every single image and never have to pay another dollar. But if you want to try this and see which ones are right for you, you can come over here and get 20 retouches for free. You can click the link in the description below to get those. And then you can run 20 of your images through a bunch of different combinations of filters to see which ones make the most sense for you. I think heal is definitely one that you're going to want to use all the time. That's my favorite. And so for me, that's definitely worth $124 if for no other reason, just to have perfect skin on all of my photo shoots. If you guys enjoy videos like this, make sure you subscribe to our channel. Also head over to fstoppers.com for free daily content. And if you're a photographer and you want to participate in our monthly contests, head over to fstoppers.com/contest where you can upload your images to our Critique the Community segment. And then each month, Lee and I pick out 10 of our favorite images. We critique them and give away some really cool prizes at the end. Things like photo editing software, cameras, lenses, lighting gear, light modifiers. So head over to fstoppers.com/contest to enter the current contest. And finally, if you want to up your game in the photography world, head over to fstoppers.com/store where you can check out our full-length photography tutorials. We have education on every type of genre, including headshots, landscape photography, product photography, architectural photography, fashion, swimwear, macro photography. If you just want to up your game in a genre that you're not as familiar with, or if you're looking to make a business in photography, this is definitely the fastest and most cost-efficient way to become a professional photographer. And we recently just uploaded free lessons to almost all of our tutorials, so if you go to any tutorial page, click on View Free Lesson and watch a free chapter from that tutorial. If there's any retouching or editing software that you want me to look at in the future, leave a comment in the description below. Otherwise, I will see you guys really soon.